Yeah.
And what we're getting from outside from that place.
Yeah. I'm trying to think across 300 odd companies here, but obviously they'd started, the ones I deal with started in India. So they'd had a substantial amount of business in India. They then in UK started that business in the UK and thereafter were selling abroad. How I would divide up the UK, their non-Indian revenues between UK and non-UK, that depended on how many years they'd been going. So as each year progressed, it tended to be that a larger chunk was international revenue, as you would expect, and less of a proportion was UK. So initially it would start off 100% UK, obviously, and then it would start dipping. You know, it might be 80% UK, 20% international, and then it would start going downwards because you're just the nature in which the business would expand is that, and that'd be a common theme with all. It'd be very rare to be in the UK and have just international revenue alone, because one of the first reasons, and it goes back to why they set up in the UK, was that there was a market for their product in Britain to begin with, and that was their sort of foothold that they wanted to be in, plus the travel links, the ease of doing business, language, the Indian community for business reasons, the networks that creates and being able to tap into were all the other reasons to pick the UK over, let's say, Holland or a Germany or any other EU country. Yeah, sure.
Do you have any website where we can get all information about your global?
Yeah, it's entrepreneurs.gov.uk. But what I'll give Nitin is I'll give him the presentation, which has all of what I've told you, all about the program rather, and he can pass that around as well. Because I think what they'll do is they'll put this up on YouTube for all the people who've missed today in any event, and give the presentation, the sort of slide deck as well.
Who is the contact person in your organization to reach?
Me, yeah, absolutely. And I'll make sure Nitin's got those details. And I can put you in touch with our post here as well. So we have UKTI people within the post. We've got them in every major Indian city as well, within our high commissions and deputy high commissions and consulates as well, and they're very keen to assist. And whilst you're at it, also look at UK India Business Council as well. They're always very keen to help as well, UKIBC. You had a question?
Yeah, so when people are looking for funding, what are they looking for? I mean,
Yeah.
what are they going to use the funds for? Is it
Yeah,
development?
it's a very good question.
Usually they relate to software companies.
Yeah.
Is it development or is it marketing or is it
Yeah.
sales?
No, it's a very good question. Very rarely did we find somebody who said we wanted funding for marketing. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is, one of it is just a very bad idea to say we want money to spend for marketing, because it sounds too much like, for instance, the author who says, if only the publisher would spend lots of money, everybody would buy my book. It's a common misconception. And what an investor doesn't want to do is give you lots of spending money so you can advertise. Normally, you should be able to show the investor that even without advertising, you've managed to get some traction. Therefore, there must be so much pent-up demand for the product, it makes natural sense that you should have some money for marketing. But then what were the other things that they were asking for? Sometimes it was to improve on the product. So they said, look, we've managed to do this much sales, and the prototype can be improved upon. If we make these improvements, we can get additional revenue channels because we can add extra services, particularly in software. We can do this, this, and this. So we can upsell to our pre-existing customers, but also we can expand to a broader market base based upon the product that we already have. So we only need, and this was a common theme with raising money. If ever you've ever raised money from a bank manager, the joke with the bank managers is they'll give you an umbrella but ask for it back when it's raining. Okay, so as long as it's sunny, they're happy for you to have an umbrella. The same thing with investors was this. If you can get to the tipping point where I as an investor say, look, if I give them this money, I'm not giving them speculative gambling money. After all, it's my money, not yours. You don't care. Quite honestly, you really don't care. But if I can give it to you where you're basically showing me, look, if I have this money, this is almost certain to happen. Because that's what I'm trying to evaluate. What's the probability of every rupee spent turning into something? Now, if the probability is 50% it turning into a sale, I'm not that excited. If it's 30%, I'm really not excited. Then I'm just giving you money to speculate, which is why I don't like giving money, or angels don't like giving money for marketing. Because how the heck do I know it's going to work? What they like giving money for, and this is annoying for entrepreneurs, is for sure things. Where the guy says, look, you know, it's effectively like saying, look, there's a bar of gold there. There's 10 bars of gold there. If you give me the money for a car, I can put it in the car and take it. And I go, yeah, well, that's a sure thing. It's almost like that. Those are the best deals. Those are the ones that get funded. So you think, well, how the hell do I turn my business into that? And that answers itself. That's the kind of business you want when you go for funding. When it was WhatsApp and people said, wow, the hell did you get to whatever it was, 14 billion? I can't even remember. So many billion. Yeah. I mean, a million people a year, a day, a million new users a day tells you this is pretty stupid not to give money. I mean, maybe the amount they gave you could tweak with, but still. So what they gave the money for was, first of all, it was something where it was quite obvious it was just going to tip, it was going to make the tipping difference because the probabilities were so high. So you then ask, well, for what will probabilities be so high? Specifically, it depends on the product and the service. But if you can position your product and service to such an extent that an investor is thinking, yeah, that additional add-on will make the difference. What they don't want to do, and what you must never ask them for, is, can I have some speculative money? You won't frame it like that, but if they see it like that, you won't get it. Can I have some money to see what's going to happen? I need to know that the demand is so great and that that product with the money can be built, and as soon as the product meets the market, it's definitely going to go. And if it can be that obvious, so that's what they wanted the money for, in broad terms. Yeah.
I mean, but
sorry, yeah, follow on?
But that's not the case, is it? Because 90% of companies fail anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little
Yeah.
ridiculous to expect that that's going to happen because...
Yeah. There's a difference between the probability that we will put upon something and what ends up happening in reality. You're absolutely right. On your basis, nobody should invest in any company and no business should ever exist. Because in reality, 90% fail. Who wants those odds? Yeah? The reason they do exist and people do invest is either because they always get the probabilities wrong, including the entrepreneur who thinks things are going to, and the investor. But before that comes the bigger problem, which is not what happens in reality, but how do you still, despite that, convince me to invest? Clearly, I'm willing to. But if you make it too much like, I'm going to be one of the failures, and this is speculative, then I won't do it at all. You don't care that 90% fail. What you care about is that you can make a convincing, realistic case to me that you're going to be the one. But that case is not, come on, Alpesh, give me some money, 90% fail anyway. You're probably going to fail in all your investments. Might as well fail with me. That's not the case.
So if I were to talk about B2B software, for instance, let's talk about a company like HubSpot. So it already has a developed product, and you probably will not, they got funded for $30 million last year. You will probably not really need, and essentially most of it has been put into sales and marketing.
Yeah.
So because the product is already there, they
Yeah,
already
yeah.
have a marketing
Yeah.
automation.
That's a different story. I mean, we're not talking there about a startup, really. I don't think we're talking there startup level when you're looking at 30 million. We're talking about somebody who's got a proven record and they're on the scale and speed. A bit like Uber. You know, I don't know if you, I think Uber's come to India now, hasn't it? Yeah? It's about, right, get to land grab new markets. But then it wasn't, still, it's not about sales and marketing. It was about building the infrastructure in each one of those new markets. I've never seen an Uber advert anywhere, actually. It's been word of mouth and viral. And I suspect the same with HubSpot. It's been, people know about it, but they needed the money for infrastructure in every new market, rather than just, let's buy a load of ad space in the Times of India or the Times of Korea or whatever. But yeah, if you're just purely saying for advertising, then people get worried.
Ads, of course, I hope I'm not stretching it a little too much, but,
Okay.
but the question which I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to is, let's say I have a company which already has a bit of a market in India.
Yeah.
And let's say that I do get to that $1 million.
Yeah.
So, and I have a developed product and I'm not really looking to
Improve upon the product, change the product, fine.
At this point of time.
Understood.
I cannot, if I have to set up a business in the UK, obviously there's an infrastructure process and there's a sales team and
Yeah.
blah, blah, and all that. And I will probably not be able to do it with $1 million in revenue.
No, that's fine. I wouldn't call any of that sales and marketing. Sorry, what I meant by sales and marketing was the guy who says, I need money to advertise on Google, I need money to put in magazines. That's what I meant by sales and marketing. I didn't mean operational expansion. I didn't even mean sales staff. That I wouldn't even put down as sales and marketing. So the unit sales is double the staff, we should double our sales, triple our sales. It was that, yeah.
So that's acceptable.
That's more than acceptable. What I meant is, we want to advertise in these 15 new magazines. I mean, the worst example is somebody says, I want to build a new brand for perfume, for argument's sake. To build a brand, I need $1 million, so I need to advertise in the magazines, and I'll create it. It's fine if you're Vertu, the phone company, and there's a big company behind you and all the rest of it, but if you're somebody who's never been heard of, and I have come across these, then that's a bad idea. Yeah, I'll do you, then you if I may, and then you, and then you.
My question is, I have a little different perspective towards seeking investment. I firmly believe that unless the investors add value to
Yeah, absolutely.
all
Smart money.
then there is no point getting the money through them.
Definitely.
So my question to you is, how do you add value to various investments?
Yeah. So first of all, the government doesn't invest itself. Just so you know, we help close the deals with the venture capitalists and the angel investors, and you pick.
So what is the role of the government?
The government is to facilitate those deals. So on the deal making, it'll be advising the companies which are the angels that will be relevant for them, which are the venture capitalists, and advising you if you need the advice on your shareholders agreement, on the terms, on any of those things. If you need that kind of service, okay, and it's free. And you might need other help, which my colleagues can give about where should we set up the offices, what are the grants available, what are the various funds available, what are the incubation centers that are available, how do we set up the company, all that kind of stuff which you do not want to be spending your staff time on, which is the sort of market friction, the reason why people find it difficult to set up abroad. They have all of that for you, all that information for you. They're almost like an extra employee. So it's for that. And you're absolutely right, you want smart money. What I invest, I run a private equity fund. What we invest as a private equity fund is where we think like you do, which is we only want to invest where we're going to add value. We're not a passive investor. If any of us want to be passive investors, then the companies that I've mentioned to you, the listed companies, would be the best bet. I mean, $3 billion companies which go up in value 100% in a year, and then we can be passive in those. Yeah. I think I said yes.
My name is Amitabh Trivedi, and we are developing a global ERP system for the last 4 years. It's like almost done. It's live in India, it's live in Tanzania, Rwanda, and Kenya. We got a customer in France as well. But three conditions that you put it is million.
Yeah.
Nowhere there.
As a rough, yeah.
But if you put half, then also they're not there.
Okay. Fine.
Question is like,
Well, Indian companies have the best return on capital employed anywhere in the world. I mean, that's the great news for shareholders, is that an Indian company can do more with $1 million than a company from any other part of the world.
so the question is that since like it's still in the development mode, but we are getting business from East Africa, one from France. There are many clients in India now. So I can see a better future to make it global, because from day one, the infrastructure, the architecture which we have developed, we have kept in mind that we have to go global.
Yeah.
Very soon we are going to launch our company in Delaware, because it's very easy
Yeah.
to launch it in Delaware. So now coming to UK part and this EU part,
Yeah.
which you have said, the difference between North American market and the EU market, that North America is one single country, but the EU market is multiple countries. They got their own logistical issues, they got their own legislative issues and all, different languages and all. So to do business in the US is simpler than do business in European Union. Question to you is like keeping our situation in mind, that we have a software which is like ready to go to global market.
Yeah.
We don't have million.
No.
Is there any
Yeah.
investment, any angel, anything type of thing?
Yeah. Given that yours is already international on the terms in which you've already done it, it's well worth looking. Ease of doing business, yes, there's issues are different. Although I don't know, if you sometimes hear somebody from Alabama, you might think they speak a foreign language to the rest of the US, but it's a separate issue. But yeah, the language is an issue, but once you're in the EU, you're passported around in terms of regulations and so on. There's not sort of a border control with your product at every single border and new license, because it's supposed to be free movement of goods and services and free movement of people once you're there as a company from any one of those EU countries. But yes, it's not the same as the United States, of course. But then again, it's not an either-or. If you're looking to go global, you want to be in both markets and the Indian market and all the others in any event. And you wouldn't ever leave out a $15 trillion hole in your marketing. So I would say, I mean, let's talk either with me or with my colleagues here at the High Commission on how you set up in the UK on a relatively low-cost basis, because obviously you don't want to be, with your current turnover, be spending lots and lots of setting up huge offices and so on. But that's relatively straightforward, given that you've already managed to do it. What I meant with the million rule was, or rule of thumb was, that there's a lot of companies, if they haven't managed to do it up to that stage, it's probably because they just don't have the revenues, the investment to be able to. You've managed to do it with under that, which means you clearly can.
The reason I asked this question is that very recently, about 6 months back, we got a very good opportunity from Sweden.
From?
Sweden.
Okay.
And that was around 6 million euro business.
Yeah.
We got their technical documentation.
Brilliant.
And we were fulfilling all their student
Yeah.
documentations. Like, that was for a chemical company. They had submitted their RFQ.
Yeah.
We went to the RFQ, and technically we were like
All of it there.
all there. But then this presence in Sweden, your life insurance coverage for the employees and all this stuff started coming, so we had to go back.
Yeah.
But if I see from the product wise, like making it global and all,
Yeah.
there, but we are just failing it because of sort of
Yeah, one of the reasons, it's a very good point, one of the reasons that quite a few of the companies want to set up in the UK is not just the brand credibility that gives, but because obviously once they're there, they're going to be more readily be able to fulfill some of these other issues. A Swedish company, what they've said to us basically is that some of their clients feel a lot more comfortable knowing that they're dealing with a UK registered address than they do. Now, it's not all of them by any means, because otherwise outsourcing wouldn't exist and half the Indian companies wouldn't have business if everybody wanted them to be in the UK. But where that became a factor, then they said, actually, we want to have a base there just so we can show them, or when we fly in, we can say, if we're not already going to be based there as well, we can say, well, actually, yes, our office is, and it might only be a one-man office or a virtual office, whatever it might be, we do have a base there as well. So for some of them, it made a difference. With yours, I think it's even more than having that, because if there's things such as key man insurance, which is a common thing that they want, yeah, I don't know if it's a common European thing, but certainly it is common in Europe. I don't know whether it's common in other places, but I mean, with my private equity company, people want key man insurance. Investors want key man insurance just for continuity. And it's pretty easy to get, and it's pretty cheap. I think it's only... Yeah, yeah. So it's not... that wouldn't be a critical factor. But some kind of presence, you can imagine why they'd want that as a... It just makes them feel reassured. Now, you could argue with them, come on, it's, what is it, 7-hour flight away to get to Sweden, but, you know, they're the customer.
creating a consortium is easier. Consortium with any local company.
Easier, well, I think it's always easier if you're in the market, if you're present in that market. But what I would say is British companies, in my experience, are very open to dealing with Indian companies in some form of consortium. And the reason for that is, and this is another strategy that I've seen Indian companies deploy, is, let's say, especially if you're looking at a big government contract, a small player, especially a small player out of a foreign country outside the EU, can often find it very difficult to penetrate that, especially if they've not had those big government contracts before, or even just a big contract with a big multinational. So very often what British companies will do is they've got that access, they'll look for subcontractors or suppliers or consortia that they will front, who will provide them the cybersecurity. We're trying to do this with the cybersecurity company, for instance, because an Indian cybersecurity company is not going to get a contract with the British government, unless it's something very minor, or with the American government or whoever else. But an Indian cybersecurity company is going to get a contract with, I don't know, Lockheed Martin or the British government if it goes via one of the approved big suppliers. It's just more likely to happen, almost certain to happen that way around. And it's the same case in whichever area you're in, not just cybersecurity, but whatever area. If you're a major supplier and you're part of a consortium with them. Now, in my experience, British companies are very open to that. I mean, subject to quality control and all the usual things, but they're not closed-minded about it by any means. If anything, they're actively looking for it. But how to find them? We should talk about that offline. Yeah. If you drop me an email, I can put you in touch with our High Commission people, and also various ways of getting hold of through various direct. I mean, UK India Business Council is a great way of getting hold of potential consortium partners. I think it was you, and then you. Okay.
I've been looking at expanding in the UK, and there were a lot of legalities involved by the British government that we need to hire X number of Europeans, we need to invest X amount of money in the government, etc. So does your company give advice on all that, and is there any kind of subsidies or grants that we receive from the government?
Yeah.
Or is it easier for me to live in UK and do the business, or do I need to live in India and then run the business in the UK?
Let me answer. So first of all, it's not my company. Remember, I'm representing the UK government. So it's the UK government that provides all this help and services. I suspect what you're talking about is a visa issue as opposed to setting up a business. Setting up a business, you can be an offshore shareholder, offshore director, costs $150. That's not a problem in terms of incorporating a company. In terms of visa, there's different visa categories. And there, the best people to speak to would be to go to one of our trade advisors at the High Commission and say, look, I want to set up a business. This is what I want to do. What's the best channel for me? Because the rules always can be a little bit sort of complex, and it's better to speak to one of the government trade advisors, and they'll say to you, actually, for your business, you might be better off doing this to get the business visa.
In past, I've seen a lot of companies prefer to set it in Ireland.
Yeah.
So how does UK compare with Ireland? Because Ireland has good tax structure for the companies.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen in the news, I think Starbucks are about to move to UK for their UK operations, and Google as well, both of whom were in Ireland. Partly because, for that reason, it was a shell, because the island's got a population of, 20 million? So it really wasn't that somebody was doing business there. So you'd have to fly to Dublin, have some people there, then you fly to the UK. What Starbucks and Google, because of the criticism they got of basically having shell structures, they said, well, actually, we'll rather be in the place where we're doing the business. If you've got questions like, what are the tax rates and stuff, I can get you, because we can provide this, a comparison. So if any of you are thinking, actually, I'm thinking of Germany or Ireland or Italy, let us know. We'll give you a comparison on...
Because in the mail, you also mentioned the mail from TIE. Luxembourg was also mentioned in the email.
Oh, that's my funds. So mine's a British asset management company, and we own companies. Our British company owns companies around the world, including funds in Luxembourg. We own companies elsewhere, including in India. So as a British company, we own and invest in companies abroad, including Luxembourg, including India.
And if I can ask, I do meet one of the criteria that you mentioned, 111. But what is the scalability? If I say that after maybe 3 years I can fetch $10 million as a turnover, or maybe $12 million,
Yeah.
would there be investors interested
Definitely.
in this kind of scale, or would they expect something much
No, definitely. Because if you go back to the IRR thing, if you're generating more than, say, 30, 40% IRR, then investors are going to be interested. If you're generating 10% IRR, then investors are going to think bank interest is better. I might as well put it in a rupee account. Yeah. So it's going to be based on that. Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
Just a quick question. Why don't VCs are interested in traditional or conventional business types, like for example, importing UK?
Yeah, I take your point. There are actually VCs who are interested in those conventional sort of investments. It's just that they don't get the kind of column inches. It's not as interesting or as sexy as saying,
What if a company provides all these three?
Yeah. No, there are venture capitalists interested in those areas as well, traditional ones, because the industry's been around for decades, actually over 100 years, the venture capital industry. So there will be those who are interested in those areas. If you look at the British Venture Capital Association website, BVCA, you'll be able to find on there venture capitalists by sector as well as obviously the traditional way, which is Google search it. But because I wouldn't be able to tell you off top of my head which ones do. But the other one is CDC, the Commonwealth, well, it was called the Commonwealth Development Council, and they've sort of re-established themselves. But they do infrastructure, not just in India, but elsewhere as well. There are many infrastructure. They tend to be private equity because it tends to be very large sums of money, which is associated more with private equity than venture capital, not necessarily. It tends to be slightly later stage and longer term, which both, again, tend to be associated more with private equity than venture capital, but yeah, capital generally. I think there were a couple at the back. If I come to you first, and then you, sorry, I forgot about you, but I'll do the gentleman there because he's older than you, so. Phenomenal.
So, we thought, because it's completely self-funded, we thought we'd go overseas where we get the opportunity. And one of the concepts that we had was one of our customers will take us overseas. And that's happened.
Yeah.
So, Jaguar Land Rover has invited us to do a pilot.
Phenomenal.
So, that's a sort of an opportunity that has come up when I got your name. And we intend to remain self-funded for the time being. And yet we want to set up operations.
Yeah.
So my question is, how could you facilitate, help us in setting up over there, given that you have customers there already?
Yeah, yeah.
We are willing to spend 100% of that customer revenue
Understood.
and subsidize it some way more, but still sort of maintain our identity
Of course.
and our personality.
Yeah. That's actually we help lots of companies in exactly that situation with the UK government. We'll swap cards. I'll make sure you speak to our senior advisors over here, as well as me, and help you get that established. And we deal actually very closely with Jaguar Land Rover, as you can imagine, in the UK as well. So anything we can do to help, whether it's from your staffing visas, if there's anything we can do to help what the regulations are, and where to set up, how to set up, what others in your peer group have done, as well, we can help with any of that.
I have a second follow-up.
Yeah.
Purely by chance, one of our customers is also Future General.
Is?
Future General.
Okay, yeah.
So, through my old colleagues network, I'm from XCS, so we have a very good network in the industry. He brought some people over from Generali to India to do some outsourcing business.
Yeah.
And I just spoke to my friend and he said, you know what, that's what happened with Generali guys over here. So I spoke to them, and they are headquartered in Italy.
Yeah.
So I just told them about the credibility because they have a joint venture with the Future Group.
Yeah.
So they were also sort of, there's a loose invitation inviting us to come to Italy.
Yeah.
The question is that, would you also be in a position to facilitate something in Italy?
Yes, well, what happens, obviously we've got our embassy and consulate, so we have our embassy in Rome and consulates around Italy. When there's a British company, our job, I forgot to mention, it's a very good point. One of the other reasons that we get Indian companies wanting to set up in Britain is then as a British company, so you'll still be an Indian company as well, but you'll have a British incorporated company as well, is that the British government has all these embassies around the world and all these consulates. All of them have trade advisors whose job it is to, if you say, look, Alpesh, I think our product will do rather well in Brazil or in Italy, and I want some warm leads, because Generali have signaled some interest, and so we think there'll be others like them. So what the posts do, what their role is, to help find those warm leads for you. They'll look into the market, they'll see who would fit the bill, whether, as I say, it's a European market or any market in the world where the British embassies or consulates are. And I've not got an official count, but I suspect that Britain has probably got more embassies and consulates around the world than any other country. I suspect that is the case. But regardless of that, the bigger point is that in terms of helping you access other markets, that's what they do. They don't do that for an Indian company, obviously. That's the Indian government's job. They do it for British companies. So if that sort of gives you a broader picture on that. But we must definitely swap cards, and I'll make sure to introduce to the right people at our High Commission or anybody else who wants that, in terms of any of the questions you might have in terms of where to set up, how to set up, the best format in which, any questions regarding employee visas, anything actually to do with establishing a business in the United Kingdom. We'll make sure that the team are there to help you do that. There was you, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, so one of the reasons the IPR in India is not kind of so successful as in Britain or outside India is because they cannot be enforced as well as they can be outside.
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at an exit,
in the
UK, do they typically look at the IPR value that's being created vis-a-vis the revenue or the return on investment? Because the Indian VCs and the angels do understand ROI and the return on investment much better than the IPR.
Yeah, of course, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
so what's the general?
It's a very good question. I think there'd be more of an IP focus in the Western markets, as you would expect. I think the general focus with VCs, private equity, will be what Warren Buffett calls a moat. Is there something you're protecting which is protectable? And what creates that moat is only sometimes intellectual property, but very often it'll be the speed at which you're growing can be the moat, because somebody else just is not going to be able to catch you up. You're just moving too quick. It could be the non-protectable intellectual property, in other words, the grey matter of the scientists that you hire and the contracts that you have with them and why they will stay with you and all the other things. So as long as there's some kind of moat, it won't necessarily matter that it's the IPR, and it won't be the case that the problem with valuing IPR, as you know, is it's such an art that it won't so much be that they're concerned about, unless it is a company which is in the business of intellectual property. It'll usually be they'll just go on revenues. It'll be judged by how well you can exploit that intellectual property. Again, the only time I've seen IPR more readily valued is where the case for sale is that we've not exploited it as much as somebody else can. It should be valued at this, not at what it is. To some extent, that's the argument for Pfizer making against AstraZeneca in terms of buying it out, is we can do more with the IPR than they can themselves, but on a global scale. But in your case, it'll be whatever the moat is. You all know what I mean by moat, don't you? It's a very English thing.
Let me give you an example. So what we're talking essentially about is, say, University of Leeds or, say, Newcastle upon Tyne doing a course on biotechnology, maybe autoimmune disorders, and the medical school fantastic.
Yeah.
And we hold the joint IPR for the curriculum and the course, so we celebrate with them.
Fine.
And this is going to stay fresh for a long time because
don't change quickly.
You develop such courses around the world with several universities and experts.
Perfect.
So I'm talking about that because it's not going to be respected in Asia as much as it would be in the West.
Sure. I think what would count there for somebody is not the fact that you've got the copyright in the materials, as much as your ability to create more, the relationships that you have, the brand value that you have, the credentials you have with the universities, the feedback you get from them. That's all your moat. In other words, what stops me from photocopying your thing and giving it? Well, you've already got the endorsements, the accreditation with those universities, the working relationship with them, maybe an exclusivity with them. Exclusivity is a moat. It's what protects it. It's not intellectual property in and of itself, but it stops somebody else stealing it. That's the point of intellectual property. What means that really only you can exploit it, not someone else. And all of those things you can answer, because actually if you said I got the copyright, well, yeah, as you say, so what? But it'll be all those other things. And the more of those you can create, the better, because it'll also add to your brand that you've got this accreditation from them as well.
I'm sorry, Alpesh, we have another conference which is supposed to start.
Oh, okay. We'll continue outside. Can I just do one thing? Because we're in the social networking stage. I will tweet how wonderful TIE has been and the event has been. Learnt this from the Oscars, which I wasn't at, but I hope nobody minds that they're about to become famous on Twitter. But I wanted to tweet it, and there you go. I'll make sure TIE, and you're going to tweet me back. There's only me here. And I'll answer your question outside and all the others. But thank you all for coming along this evening. It's been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.